Welcome to the third and final episode in a Legendarium series about the history of Halloween. In Part 3, The Modern Celebration, we will talk about Halloween's history in the United States. Colonial festivities featured the telling of ghost stories and mischief-making of all kinds. By the middle of the 19th century, annual autumn festivities had become a common event across the country, but most Americans did not yet celebrate Halloween. In the second half of the 19th century, a wave of new immigrants came to the United States. These new immigrants, especially the millions of Irish fleeing the potato famine, helped to popularize the celebration of Halloween across the United States. By coming here, the Irish introduced Americans to the jack-o'-lantern, an autumn festival dominated by the dead and wicked spirits. Borrowing from these Irish traditions, Americans began to dress up in costume and travel from house to house asking for food or money, a practice that eventually became today's trick-or-treat tradition. Young women believed that on Halloween they could divine the name or appearance of their future husband by doing tricks with yarn, apple parings, or mirrors. One ritual involved looking in a mirror at midnight by candlelight for a future husband's face would supposedly appear, a variant of the Bloody Mary ritual many school children are familiar with today. By the late 1800s, the tradition of playing tricks on Halloween became well established. In the United States and Canada, the pranks included tipping over outhouses, opening farmers' gates, and egging houses. Of course, property owners did not much care for this rough treatment of property. During the late 1800s, a popular movement in America sought to craft Halloween into a holiday more about community and neighborly get-togethers than about ghosts and trashing things. At the turn of the century, Halloween parties for both children and adults became the most common way to celebrate the day. These parties centered on games, the foods of the season, and festive costumes. Newspapers and community leaders urged parents to forbid anything frightening or grotesque in Halloween celebrations. Because of these efforts, Halloween lost most of its superstitious and religious overtones, and by the beginning of the 20th century. However, they did have a new candy to pass around called candy corn. Made from fondant, corn syrup, marshmallow cream, vanilla, and sugar, it was originally called chicken feed to appeal to a still rural country. It is now the favorite treat of 12% of Americans. By the 1920s and 1930s, Halloween had become a secular but community-centered holiday with parades and town-wide Halloween parties as the featured entertainment. Unfortunately, these family-friendly community gatherings often resembled unruly block parties. Despite the best efforts of many schools and communities, vandalism once more began to plague these celebrations. Communities came up with a number of responses. Once, Halloween vandalism in Omaha became so bad that the local police department deputized 500 teenage boys for the night. In 1938, Boston gave awards to the school districts that had the least damage after Halloween. These isolated but destructive cases led the Senate Judiciary Committee to consider banning Halloween and replacing it with National Youth Honor Day. This did not take off. By the 1950s, town leaders had successfully cracked down on vandalism, and Halloween evolved into a holiday directed mainly at children. Due to the high numbers of young children born during the baby boom after World War II, parties moved from town civic centers into the classroom or home. Curiously, the American tradition of children going out to beg for food took place on Thanksgiving before the 1950s. Parents sent their children out to go door to door, begging for Thanksgiving treats. Now this tradition shifted to Halloween. Trick-or-treating became an inexpensive way for an entire community to share the celebration. Unfortunately, on Halloween 1950, countless kids became sick after trick-or-treating. Scores of children started experiencing intestinal issues, welts, and rashes. So many grew sick that it came to the attention of the FDA, who traced the problem to orange dye number 1. Even though previously approved by the government in 1906, more research found that the orange dye used products made by processing coal and containing the toxic chemical benzene. On Halloween 1950, enough children finally ate enough of the dye to become sick and get the attention of the FDA. This led to orange dye number 1 being banned from further use, and Halloween candy continued its march to supremacy. Today, Americans spend an estimated $6 billion annually on Halloween, making it the country's second largest commercial holiday after Christmas. That amounts to Halloween candy making up nearly a quarter of the candy bought in the United States. It is also a staple of popular culture and has influenced many works of art, the most famous example being the 1978 classic John Carpenter's Halloween. And so a pagan holiday grew into a Christian celebration. That wraps things up for this Legendarium series. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, press like. If you want to see more, press subscribe. And if you've got anything to say, let me know in the comments section. Thanks again for joining me, and I hope that you have a great rest of the day.